and welcome to this episode 217 of Frame and Reference. You're about to drop into a conversation between me, Kenny McMillan, and my guest Dan Laustsen, ASC DFF, DP of Frankenstein. Enjoy. I have to say, I was very excited to see you come across my desk because I've your more recent work especially has been some of my favorite. I mean, I love Guillermo del Toro, but obviously John Wick and all that is like, you know, teenage boy, even though I'm 35, dreams, you know.
Of course, but you know, I think everything is great. I love John Wick word and I love Guillermo's word. You know, it's both of them is a dream for me.
Yeah, well, it does feel like people do seem to call you to create very like heightened reality style. You know, they're not that, even though Guillermo's very fantasy, it's not even like, you know, your Nightmare Alley could be considered fantasy, but it's still very grounded.
Yes, and yes, for sure. But that's again, that depends on the story, of course. You know, I'm very much into the directions I work with stories, so I'm follow that. It's not like, I think as a cinematographer, it's very important you follow the story and the director's vision. And whatever projects you're doing, you have to change your style and your vision. But of course, I like this like moving camera, single source lighting, colorful things. But I would love to do a black and white movie once, but it never came up. So I don't know.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Didn't they remake Nightmare Alley to do black and white, but you didn't shoot it that way?
No, we did that in post. And of course, it still looks very nice. But I'm just saying, if you shoot it black and white, you should go black and white. But nobody wants to go true black and white. Everybody's shooting. Most of the people are shooting color and then changing to black and white later on. Yeah. And I think the nature should be like monochromatic as you're shooting black and white.
I was just a couple of days ago, I was looking up to see if anyone was selling those red monochromes, and they're not online. They even made a Komodo monochrome, but can't find them.
No, I think Alexa Area making a monochrome as well, but I don't know if you can buy it. I have no idea.
I'm not.
And I'm sure it's super expensive.
Yeah. Well, on the other side of that, I can't. Was it you got? Did you shot which John Wicks, 4 and 3?
2, 3, and 4.
2, 3, and 4. So was it you who ordered every Astera Titan tube in the world?
Plus 2, yes, we did. We did that. Especially number 3, we have a lot of exterior tubes in it, but number 4 as well. So, you know, because it's a really good tool. It's super fast and you can control it from an iPad and it's really handy and it's not too expensive. And it's just giving, if you have, depends what you want to do, of course, but you know, shooting in New York and it looks a little bit dull and you want to pep it up, those tubes are really, really cool. So I think it's a very, very good piece of equipment.
Yeah, I'm friends with Robert over at Astera, and I think he's the one who told me that tidbit. He was like, we didn't have any for like months. They took them all.
Yeah, we took them all. We took a lot of them, but it's a fantastic good piece of equipment. So I like it. Depends on the story. You cannot use them on Frankenstein, I think, but that's another thing.
Well, now that Astera makes those all kinds of different bulbs and stuff, they've got the new like projector bulbs. They've got the Nix bulbs. They keep making great tools.
Of course, they keep doing some nice stuff.
Yeah. So my girlfriend obviously watches movies with me, and I've got her to now point out when the tubes show up. She'll be like, "Oh, there they are." I'm like, "Yeah, they're everywhere. They're in every movie."
And that is one of the issues. Sometimes, you know, you're using them, and then everybody's using them, and then you have to do something else because you just try to do something new and more cool. But again, on Frankenstein, we didn't use that kind of stuff. We went back to the old-fashioned, like big lights outside the window, like 20Ks and Dinos and all that kind of stuff. And
go ahead.
No, but that's another way. You know, we just think that was better for that movie. Every movie have their own world and their own tours to shoot with.
Yeah, and to your point about doing something different, I feel like we're kind of experiencing the same thing that happened with like when Kino came out. And just everything. And I feel like we've been on the tail end of this big soft Kino experiment for 30 years.
Yeah, no, for sure. Because it works really well. It looks nice and it's fast and it's easy. And that sometimes you have to go away from the easy. You have to go back to the reason everybody did it direct light in the old days because you need exposure and stuff like that, but you want to be more precise. When you have this soft light, actors can go everywhere. And again, there's no rules. You can do whatever you like and whatever you think is good for you and for the movie. But sometimes I think direct light it's nicer, and it's of course a little bit more difficult to control, but I just like the look of more direct light.
Well, so do I. And I think, especially, I always try to think of things from like the audience's perspective. And I think sameness tends to make them tired, when you have like the big superhero genre, taking up 20 years of everyone's mind. And hard light, I feel like, is one of them. I'm seeing even like students become more interested in even not well managed hard light, because it's something. And also I think people are more interested in either sort of theatricality fantasy like you tend to do recently, or raw and kind of messed up.
Yes, for sure.
Perfection, I think, it's so easy to be perfect now. It's like, how do you know if it's real? It's weird concept.
But isn't that the whole problem right now with everything? What is real and what is not real? And the AI is coming in, and some of that stuff looks, if you just see it right away, if it's too perfect, it looks like AI. And, I think that's the reason it's so cool to like working with Guillermo, for example, because he wants to do it for real, and he wants to do it real on the real way. So there's not too much CHS. It's like they're going back to the old traditions, and it works. I think when it works, it's really, really cool. But I have nothing against new technology. It's just the world have always changed, and everything has we have to try that now. And remember, we didn't do that for 20 years ago. Now we try to do it again. It's just another way to tell the story, and I think that's important. You have that feeling about what is actually the story about.
Well, and I feel like it's, to me, it's such like a privilege to be able to focus on the story when you have someone like Guillermo who has such an attention to detail that you can focus on your job versus someone coming up to you and going like, how do we make this look good? And you're like, well, it's with Guillermo. It's like, it's all there. The production designer figured that out. You just point it,
No, but again, when you're doing production design, everything is, it's one movie. So, when you're working as a cinematographer, you're working very close to this production design because you're talking about where should the windows be, what do we need, what do we don't need. It's a close relationship with everybody on the movie, and that is the beauty. Of course, you have the director, Guillermo, as a captain, and he's just decide what way the ship should sail.
Yeah. Speaking of that ship, you mentioned the everything being for how much of that ship was that on, I assume on the ice ship from Frankenstein. Was that whole thing built on a set? Because that whatever that set extension is, whatever you did there is flawless.
Yeah. No, the ship is built in Toronto on a parking lot outside the studio.
Oh, really?
The full ship is built there, not the full mast, and not the full, but the whole 100-meter long ship is built there. Mm. Of course, we put artificial ice out and extended CT, but the ship is a ship. It's built like it is in the movie, and it's pretty impressive. It's a huge ship. And of course, a huge setup with a lot of night shoots. So, you want to do that as real as possible, a lot of steam and smoke. And it's there's a full ship, and the ship was built on a gimbal. So, when the creature is pushing the ship, that's actually on a gimbal. It's not like CT. Mm. So it is for real, and was a very fantastic.
I noticed in Frankenstein, I've got so many notes. I'll just start in the middle. Lots of camera movement. Obviously, with a lot of your films, there's a lot of camera movement. But this one, I at a certain point, I was watching it Netflix, so I was able to. There was only a few of us. It was like me and the entire Spanish press team.
That's nice.
It was very nice. The sound was incredible. But it gave me time to think academically. It was hard. I was getting sucked into it. It was a phenomenal film. But I was wondering, like, how much of that camera movement is instinctual? How much are you planning when everything's blocked off, or do you have those shots pre-planned and then everyone kind of works around them? Because it's very it's almost like a dance, everyone's always
but that's that's what we like, Guillermo and me. We like to move we really like to move the camera. I think the camera if you're moving the camera and you're doing it right, it's like the third dimension of movie making. You know, of course, you can just put the camera up and that's things happen in front of that, and there's nothing wrong with that. But we just like to use the camera like a right with the camera and painting with the light. That's a big deal for us. So we are shooting everything on remote hits. You know, we haven't shot one single shot of a movie on a dolly where the operator is looking into a camera. So we shot everything on a crane or G-Barm or Steadicam. So the camera's moving all the time. And, you know, we shot a lot of the movies on a techno crane or movie bird or whatever we used. So all those shots are kind of planned, but Guillermo he's making the shots as we, you know, he's talking to the grips and to the operators about when we are shooting, because go a little bit up, go a little bit left, go a little bit right. It's going to be a little more like a dance. It's improvising, but it's very precise at the same time. So we know, of course, where we are master is, and a lot of the stuff we are starting on a big wide shot and coming into a close-up in the same shot. And of course, it's a challenge. That's a challenge as a cinematographer, because you have to have the light far away. And so the wide shot in the beginning has to look fantastic, and the close-up has to be magic. So it's a little bit of a challenge, but it's fun to do it, and it's very, very great storytelling, I think.
Well, and you guys don't shoot at like an annoying stop, right? I imagine you're not at like a 1:4.
No, not at all. I'm shooting the whole movie on T4.
Yeah.
I do that all the time, outside and inside. I'm shooting the whole, because I think that's the best T-stop for what we like to do. And on Frankenstein, we shot everything large format. We shot Alexa 65.
Oh,
all the way through Steadicam and everything. And we shot with Leica Charlie lenses. And our main lenses was the widest one they're making, the 24 millimeter. So we shot 80 or 85% of the movie with that one lens.
Oh, wow.
And so that's the beauty of shooting large format. You know, it's holding very much up in the close-up as well. So you can go in and make a nice close-up with a 24 millimeter, and it doesn't look like too wide angled.
Yeah.
But because the sensor is so big, it feels really nice in the close-up as well.
Well, and one thing I noticed was, again, how much heavy lifting the production designer's doing in terms of the sort of, you know, quote unquote look of it. But while the from the cinematography side, it's still clean, but it doesn't feel clinical, which I think is something that isn't much of a problem anymore. But for years, everyone was always worried that, like, oh, if we shoot, you know, some really crisp Leicas on a high resolution sensor, it's going to look bad.
We are shooting with a diffusion filter inside the camera. So we have a click on magnetic diffusion filter behind the lens.
Oh, which one?
Black Promised.
Oh, okay.
Quarter or 8 Black Promise, but that's behind the lens.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like to have a filter in front of the lens, because I like to have a lens flare. I don't want to have a filter flare. And when you put it behind the lens, it's taking this digital look away. And you're still diffusing the highlights, but the black is going to be black, and rich. And I think to see that clearly in Frankenstein, the highlight is burning out in a nice way, but the black is still very black. And again, we try to do much more steam comparing to using smoke, because steam is disappearing faster, but you still it's getting organic thing, where smoke is just building up. So a lot of times we use steam instead of smoke. And of course, that's the special effects guys are doing an amazing job there. But that's again to take that digital look away.
Right.
And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, because I like the look. But, you know, a lot of people talked about this getting too clean, and you're right about that. But I don't think that is when the sensor is smaller.
Yeah.
Then you have this, like, it's getting because everything is getting sharp. And it looks a little bit artificial. And that's the beauty of the last sensor, because the depth of field is very small. From my taste.
And well, I'm with you there. And also the thing that really, because when I was in film school, the 5D had just come out.
Oh yeah.
About my sophomore year, I think.
Yeah.
And but that was still soft, right? Because it was like 1080p and it was real mushy, and everyone, of course, was shooting on a 1.2, you know.
Yeah, for sure.
But so I was kind of poo-pooing large format for a while, or not large, whatever you want to call it, full format for a while.
Yeah, but it was pretty big format, Super 35. It was pretty big.
They used to call Super 35 digital large format, which I always thought was Micro Four Thirds was almost large format. But the thing that I'm noticing now is the more modern, larger sensors create a not a lower spatial resolution, but just like a softness, the transition, the gradation between tones, like on the bigger the sensor nowadays seems to create a much more nuanced, quote unquote, film like, I guess, image versus, like you're saying, the smaller sensors, which just kind of look sharp.
Yeah. And, again, big sensor, the depth of field is just getting nicer, I think. And, the color separation is nicer, and
yeah,
the dynamic range is good. It's just, again, it's a matter of taste, but I just think this, for us, it works really well.
Yeah. When did you make the transition from film to digital with open arms, or was that like a tough one for you?
I was so much against digital in the beginning. I was shooting film too. I couldn't do it anymore. But then I run into these situations where people said, we don't like this grain. What is that grain thing, And then you have to go into noise reduction. And I was really a backseat driver there. I didn't like to change, but I did it. And I like it. I think it's the movies I've done with Guillermo and everybody else, it's like shot digital for some years. I have nothing against it. I think it's fantastic. It looks great, I think. And there's not like, I'm not dreaming about shooting on film. I have nothing against shooting on film because I've done that so many times. But the look of Frankenstein and John Wick's, those, I'm pretty happy about that look.
Yeah. The thing I've noticed in Frankenstein was I think obviously you've done this before, but whatever combination of green and yellow that you're using is just, my eyeballs really enjoy that. That's a very where do you come up with that specific? Are you sitting there and how do you come up with that color palette and know like when's too far, when does it look too LED, for instance, if that's a good way to describe it, versus.
I just think it's a matter of taste. Again, we try every time we're doing a movie, Guillermo and me, for example, we are talking about we should go away from steel blue. Steel blue is like this greenish look.
Yeah.
And we try to find, shooting a lot of camera test and lens test and color test. And we're just coming back to the same, this is actually the way we want. That's the look we really love. And of course, then when you're shooting, for example, as on the ship we talked about before, all the moonlight is steel blue.
Mm.
We're starting with a tungsten light, and then I'm putting steel blue on it. Or, you can go vortex or whatever, LED lights, and just dial that steel blue in. And then when we have the torches, for example, that is the orange. So that is just a combination in between. And I think the steel blue is very sensitive for exposure. So if your exposure is not right on, the color is changing a lot. So that is one of the keys to like be sure where your exposure is for the steel blue specific. Of course, color is always changing exposure, but it feels like steel blue is very sensitive for the color palette. And again, the way we are shooting the movie on our dailies and the final movie, the final looks color-wise is the same. We're not changing colors in post because the whole color palette on the movies I'm doing is so specific. The clothes and the wardrobe and the sets and everything, So if you're changing the color a lot in the DI, you're changing the whole look. And we don't like that. We're spending so much time to find the right colors. Of course, costumes and set design is dialed into that as well. So, if I just took a little bit green out, everything was going to change. So our color palette from the dailies to the final movie is exactly the same. Of course, when I'm coming into the DI, I'm doing a lot of power windows and all this kind of cool stuff. But the color palette is the same.
Yeah. So when you're designing your shooting LUT, is it?
I don't use a shooting LUT.
Oh, you just 709 in the viewer and.
Exactly. And then day to day, I'm just making a look for the movie for that scene. But it's very close. It's a little bit color, saturation, and then smash the blacks. If I want to change color, I'm changing the color on the light. I'm not doing that in the DI, or not in the DI, but at the DITs. So it's a little bit like we shot on film in the old days. You put a film in, and the color temperature on that film, and then you changing the color on the lights.
Yeah.
So I'm working still this way.
There's because I saw the movie in the Netflix office, it was dark. It was like incredibly dark. So half of my notes are like written over each other. But I do have here.
Sorry about that.
Oh, that's not your fault. I need to like get like a dark red glow stick or something that I can, because it happens in any theater, where it's like I'm trying to take notes and I'm like, I can't see. You got to do like this one. But I've got here memento mori lighting and then 5 check marks. When they're I had to think about it for a second. When they're in the state and there's like that skull like tableau thing when he's taking pictures, I think, or he's painting or something. You know what I'm talking about? There's like flowers and then like a skull.
Oh yeah.
That whatever that was the most painterly image I've ever seen set to camera. I was just fascinated to know, were you just blasting light through the shears and that just happened to look great, or did that take a lot of finagling? Because it looks phenomenal.
It takes a lot of equipment outside. We have, when we're doing a movie, there's very little. Oh, by the way, everything is like designed very precise, but we have a shitload of light outside those windows, and some smoke in there. It was a very old house in Scotland, and we have a little bit of issues with the atmosphere smoke, but we was allowed to do that in the end. So it's very light atmospheric smoke, and a lot of 18Ks outside the windows blowing in, and a lot of negative fills. So because what I'm doing, like we have a negative fill outside the window, so the sun is not interfering, and then we're putting light in front of the blacks. So all that light is it's a lot of light out there, and I'm happy you liked it because I think it looks pretty cool. But there was a lot of lights out there.
How much? Because you'd mentioned earlier about most of the light being outside the set and coming in. How much are you doing, like in the perms or like on set? Do you try to keep everything out of the sort of acting zone?
I'm not trying. I'm keeping everything out.
Yeah.
There's no lights in the set. It's all light is coming through the windows, and if the daylight scene, the smoke is bouncing a little bit around. If it's a night scene, we have some fire effects from some LED lights to make fire effects from the fireplaces or from candles. But again, moonlight is outside. Everything is outside. And because the way we are shooting, you cannot sneak any lights in or very little light in for the close-up, because we are starting, as I talked about before, we're starting super wide.
Right.
And coming into a close-up in the same scene, in the same shot. So, it is a kind of challenging to do that. But and again, if we are using atmosphere as we do a lot, if you're bringing lights inside the rooms, you're just smashing the smoke right away. So you have to have it outside. So the windows are going to be a kind of a gobo that keeping the light to run too much around.
Right.
And it works really well. Of course, it takes some equipment outside the windows. It's not easy, but it's great.
Did it take, I saw an interview you did, or he's a director, but both with, I think it was on The Color Purple, and the studio interference and stuff. How long did it, was there a moment for you where you were like, oh, they trust me now? Versus people coming in and meddling and trying to get you to like, hey, we're spending a lot of money here. Can we please get a fancy light in here for the actress so that she looks beautiful because we're
no,
or whatever.
Nobody's interfering with that. That's me and the directors making the look of the movie, and that's the beauty. The director that trusts me. So nobody's coming in and said this is. And sometimes people say this is too dark or whatever, and then you just have to adjust the monitors because they look on the monitor, and whatever. But no, the look of the movies is the look we like. Nobody's, Yeah, nobody's interfering with the look of the movie because the director and me is making that look. So we are pretty lucky there about this is the way it should look and this is the way it's going to look.
Yeah.
And nobody's coming in and said, of course the director can talk to me about this is, but we're working so close together. It's not a battle. It's a pleasure because we want to do the same thing.
Yeah.
I think that's the beauty about movie making is you have to work together with the right people.
You had mentioned all the steam and whatnot, and obviously in Nightmare Alley, it was just coming out of the floor. You know, at the how do you? This is something I've always struggled with whenever there's a haze machine or whatever. How do you maintain the exposure and the density of that when you're working with so much of it?
It's only the good part that's going to be in the movie.
Okay, fair.
Of course, when you're using smoke and steam, it's an organic thing and you cannot always control it. But, in Nightmare Alley, for example, we're building steam pipes on all the gangways, the catwalks. And it works really, really well. But that was something we have from the beginning. We want to have steam coming up through the catwalks. And again, steam is much better than smoke because steam is disappearing and smoke is just building up. Right. Of course, you cannot have steam inside the room, as we talked about before. There have to be smoke. But maintenance is like you have to fill the room up with smoke and just try to keep it as good as you can. And of course, you're fighting with that. Sometimes it looks like the forest is going to burn down because whatever. It's just very organic. And as I said, it's the best thing is going to stay in the movie. But it's a very organic thing. And sometimes you just hated it because it's so complicated. And the special effects people are fighting like crazy to do it. But again, it's just, if you want to do that and the director likes to do that, you just have to fight for it and everybody's going to help.
Yeah. Well, and when you're aiming for that, precision, is it kind of like a Fincherian thing where it's like, we're just going to keep doing takes until the actor's correct and the smoke is correct and the movement is correct and it all comes together? Or do you kind of have to go like, all right, we got to move?
No, a lot of times, it depends on the movies. Of course, you have to go. That's the nature of making movies. There's going to be an edge where it's not Lawrence of Arabia, it's Frankenstein, but that's more or less the same. I'm just, you have to aim for the best, of course. And if you're running into serious problems with somebody or something, when the performance is perfect, you have to fix that in post. And that's where, for example, visual effects coming in and clean up. And again, you need all the help for everybody. And we try to do it as perfect as we can in the camera when we're shooting it. But if we have any issues on Frankenstein, then it's the visual effects supervisor is cleaning it up and helping, adding a little bit more, take something away. But most of the time we do it in the camera. And that is our goal. Our goal is to make as much as we can in camera. And again, sometimes it's not possible because you have no wind in the morning and then in the afternoon you have a lot of wind and the smoke is disappearing and we just have to go.
Yeah. On a film, how many weeks? I'm just gonna try. I learn in comparison and analogy, but so how many weeks was Frankenstein versus the fourth John Wick?
Shooting days?
Yeah.
I think it was more or less the same, 100 plus days.
Right.
Around 100, something like that. I don't remember exactly, but it's around 100 days of shooting. And of course, it's a lot of shoot.
Yeah.
A lot of days of work.
My question being, is the sort of what I guess they call the John Wick action of it, it's its own thing now. Does that become more tiresome than something a little more, because there's a lot of movement in Frankenstein. There's some action scenes, there's a lot going on, you blow up the building, but it's not at the John Wick level. Is it kind of just the same mentality, or how are they the same and how are they different?
No, two different directors, two different stories.
Sure.
Same cinematographer, but it's the same amount of work. You still have to shoot a lot of action. You have to shoot a lot of dialogue. And both movies had a lot of different locations.
Right.
Frankenstein is a lot of locations. Some of the Frankenstein's castle is shot in Scotland, but inside, some of that is built in Toronto, and something is shot on location in Scotland. So, it's a lot of different locations, so you have to keep track on that, and that's the same on John Wick, a lot of different locations. But I think the biggest difference is less. John Wick is more editing, faster cuts. Mm-hmm. And John Wick, we're always shooting with 2 cameras. On Frankenstein, on Guillermo, we only shoot with 1 camera. Everything is 1 camera on all Guillermo's movies. So, that's the biggest difference, I think. It's 1 camera against 2 cameras. But, on John Wick, we are pretty good to find B camera, the right angles for the light. Mm. We try to do everything so it looks this cool and the same atmosphere. But Frankenstein is 1 camera and much more like a single source lighting because it's shot from 1 angle. And I would say less colorful because John Wick 4 was pretty colorful.
Yeah.
But that was perfect for that movie. But again, we like Guillermo as well. We have a lot of saturation to the color. The orange is really orange. And so that is, but the difference between those 2 movies is 1 camera, 2 cameras, I think. And of course, the directors, it's a huge thing.
Yeah.
Each director have their own style. So I just try to support them.
Yeah. What were some of the things that you learned from, was it Chad directs all the...
Yeah.
Yeah. So Chad and Guillermo, obviously, like you said, 2 completely different styles, but what's some stuff you've learned as a DP from either of them that you've carried on through your other work?
I just think I learned from both of them, everything has to be perfect.
Yeah.
That is what both directors, if you're talking about those 2 directors, but I'm just saying that I think most directors want to do it perfect, but both of them, they want to do it as perfect as they can go. Mm. And that is fantastic. That's as a cinematographer is like, of course it's a challenge, but it's a fantastic challenge. And nothing is good enough because you want to do it perfect. And I think you can see that on the movies because they're very stylish movies and it's great, I think. But you cannot do that as a cinematographer. You need to do that with the director because the director is the captain. Of course, you're working together and talking the same language, but I don't think you can make a really good looking movie if the director doesn't want to do it because it takes time. You cannot just shoot. You have to design the thing. You have to do it correctly, and that is coming from the director.
Yeah, I mean, you'd much rather them look at you and say, "Can we do that better?" versus them telling you "Hey, there's no budget for that. Hey, we got to move. Hey, it's." No,
I've been in that situation a million times in my life. Of course, just when you're young and you're starting like that, the money is different, and it's a very luxurious thing to shoot 100 days on a movie, of course. But everybody, I think all filmmakers in the world want to do it as good as they can. It's just sometimes the time and schedule and money and all that is a different thing. But that was the same when I was starting as a young cinematographer. Everything was much smaller crew, much smaller money. But again, I don't think, depends on the story. You can still make a very cool looking movie with less budget. It depends on where it is and what it is. Mm. But of course, working with directors that just want nothing is good enough except the best, and that's fantastic.
Well, and to your point about making things cool on any budget, do you feel like that is actually sort of achieved by limitation? Because I feel like if you're someone who is just given the world, you won't end up making something cool, because if you say do anything, you don't know what to do. But if you're like, do anything under these constraints, and you self-limit a little bit, it can actually end up working out for you better in some cases.
Yeah, but it's always like movie making is always like that because it's time and money. So and you cannot shoot for 500 days. It's always like whatever. There's always something we have to go. The next. I think it's all depends. Movie making is a very expensive artwork. Yeah. And it's you just have, again, that's about the story. It's about what is the story, how should the story look like. And I don't feel we are spoiled, if that's what you try to say. We just try to do the best looking movie for that project. And again, it seems like people like it because, for example, John Wick, a lot of people went into the cinema to see that. And that is, I think that definitely people want to see a high quality product. It's not like you can shoot everything on a flashlight and just make it like that. You can do that. There's nothing, again, as I said before, there's nothing wrong. All styles are cool right now. And I think that is amazing because when I started as a cinematographer, there were so many rules about you cannot do that and you cannot do that. And the editors want your back all the time or you cannot cut those two pictures together. So there was a lot of old-fashioned rules there, and I think now the world have opened up, and it's so much more perfect because there's no right and wrong anymore. It's just what you like.
Yeah.
And I think that's a matter of taste, and that's a matter of directors, the cinematographers, and everybody else because it's a teamwork to make movies. This is the look of the movie we want to do, and you have to do that as good as you can because if you have a very nice built set and you light it like super flat, it looks flat. That's the power of light. Light is like light and shadows is the power of atmosphere in the scene. And it's fantastic.
Yeah.
And that is, I think that sometimes when you see some movies, looks maybe flat, but I think those people likes it. It's again, there's nothing right and wrong anymore. We like the movie. The movie we're shooting looks exactly like the way we think it should look.
Well, and obviously this is a sweeping statement, but I do kind of wish more movies looked the way you guys make them. Because I do think that it is like much easier to get carried away with a story when there's a bit more, I don't know the correct adjective, but like theatricality, I suppose, to the image. Because when things are too, I mean, obviously it depends on the story, but when things are too naturalistic, too maybe documentarian to a degree, you start thinking about the reality of the situation, right? So like with Frankenstein, if you were like, this is a real guy, like that would not, I mean, emotionally, obviously you want to believe it's a real guy, but if you start thinking about the mechanics of putting him together, you'd be like, that wouldn't happen. And that comes with obviously the way that you light it and the way that the colors you're using.
I'm sure 100% you're right. But, again, it's a matter of taste. If you want to shoot everything very documentary, very document, I'm from Denmark where we shot a lot of documentary movies. And I think that time was really, really good. And I think everything has changed a little bit. There was a period where everything had to be no lights. Everything had to be shot on the handheld. And again, I think that works really
situation.
Yeah, and it works really well for some stories. And I have nothing against it. I think it's really good. But when we're doing Frankenstein or John Wick or whatever, it's the light is so big part of the movie and the atmosphere and the costumes and the sets is like everything is so precise designed. So for us, there's very little, oh, by the way.
Right.
And that's the reason we're choosing the lenses and the camera and all that and the lighting, because we want to do it. This is the way we want to shoot it. And this is the way it should look like. Yeah.
Yeah. I will say, I don't, off the top of my head, and there's not a lot going on up there, so I'm probably missing people, but there aren't a lot of people whose work looks like yours. And I was wondering I definitely mean that as a compliment. Who inspired you? Like, who did you learn from? Where did you build this eye?
I cannot tell you. I don't know. I'm educated as a Danish film school from many years ago. And I think, and before that, I was a fashion photographer for a very short period because I'm educating as a fashion photographer when I was very young, and I didn't like to do that. So it changed. And then I went to the Danish film school. And of course, I went to the film school with totally open eyes. I have no idea what movie was. I'm not this kind of guy that wake up when I was 3 years old and said, I want to be Bergman or Sven Nykvist or Storaro. So, I just think you learn of life, you learn about, you see stuff on the streets. It's a long process about how your style is changing. But I think I've always been fascinated about the light has to be the right position. I shot a lot of documentaries when I went to the film school and after that as well. But I've always been fascinating about the power of light, and don't be afraid of the darkness. I think that is, and of course, there's so many fantastic cinematographers now, and there have been so many fantastic cinematographers. And, as I said earlier, what I like about the old black and white movies is like, there's a light and the actors have to stay there. But that was just getting too stiff, and that was the reason everything changed, in the 80s and 90s, because I think a lot of directors didn't like to go that way because the actors have to stay on the exactly specific spot. And of course, we try to do that the way I'm doing right now. But again, the camera's moving, and the actors are moving, and it's just getting more organic.
Yeah.
So I don't know where my inspiration is coming from. It's just coming from painters and other movies, and of course, all the movies everybody likes. But there's a very famous Russian movie called I'm Cuba. You should check that out.
I'm Cuban?
I'm Cuba, like the country. I'm Cuba.
Okay.
It's shot of two Russian directors and a Russian DP in 1962. And it's a masterpiece. Everybody should see that movie because it's unbelievable. Mm. It's a shot documentary, but shot extremely precise as well. And that is one of my hero movies. It's fantastic. But again, I'm getting inspiration for everyone. The directors I'm working with, it's like inspirations me a lot. And see another movie, I see a painting. And of course, my world is getting much more colorful here in the last couple of movies. And that's really cool. And of course, color is very powerful, but you have to be careful, because if you're coming on the wrong side of the thin red line, it can be cheesy. But again, it's just a matter of style and taste. We just try to do it the way we like it. And I really like single source lighting. I really like to be on the dark side, on the line for light. So that is that's what I like. But sometimes you work and Guillermo said, let's shoot it from this way, and we do that. We talk a lot about the lights, of course. And again, we have the same feeling, the same taste, and that's the same with John Wick. It's you have to try to work together with people when you're saying red that don't think blue, right? Because then that's far. It's a long journey. But again, you have to be open-minded, and I think that's the most important about movie making. You have to be open-minded, because I really like to be together with people that are clever than me, and it's not so difficult, because and be open-minded. There's I don't have all the answers. I just want to do it as cool as we can do, and if somebody have a better idea, let's go that way. But you cannot do that on the day. You have to be thinking ahead.
Yeah, that actually brings up a good question that I neglect to ask a lot, and I should get it more front of mind. But when you're working on these more elaborate films, any of the Guillermo films, obviously John Wick's, what is your, like, when everyone does pre-production probably a little different, but when you're going in, like, what is the first couple things that you're trying to set baselines for? Because there's like a famous Fincher quote that I've quoted, which is like, we need to figure out what we don't do. We need to go in and be like, this isn't a handheld, this isn't, this color, whatever. Do you do that kind of thing, or what?
No, we just try to figure out what is the story about, where are we going to shoot it, how are we going to shoot it. But it's a long process. It's not like, of course, if we need to, on Frankenstein, we didn't shot any handheld stuff at all. We shot the whole movie on remote heads.
Right.
As I said before, no, we didn't do one single shot with the operator was looking into the eyepiece. We shot everything on remote heads or Steadicam. On John Wick, it's more like we're using handheld, Steadicam, cranes, everything. I just think it's more like, what is that scene about? How do you want to do it? What is the lighting situation? And it's because the prep is so long, so we have a lot of time to talk about it. What is that scene going to be, and where are we going to shoot it? And then we find the locations, and when we find the locations, we're going to change the color palette again. So it's a very soft and very long process about how we're going to shoot it. But pretty fast, we know the color palette of the movie. It depends, of course, what movie it is, but it's not like we're waking up in the morning that this is the way it should be. It's again, it's a lot of inspirations, and the directors is normally, the directors have the movies in their head for many, many years and months. So I'm listening to the directors all the time. For me, it's like, what is the director's dream, and how can I help with that, and how can I support that movie? Because I'm working for the director and for the movie. So for me, it's like, I really like to support us 100%. And I just try to do it. Sometimes what about we doing that and that instead of that and that? And it's a cooperation. It's great.
Yeah. Well, and especially with Guillermo, those colors, all the behind the scenes I've seen I've mentioned a million times that the behind the scenes on like Hellboy 2, I think it's longer than the movie. Like I love how giving he is with the information.
Yeah.
But he's so precise about the use of color, and I really do appreciate that.
Yeah, and that was coming all the way back from Mimic, and I think his first movie was Kroner.
I got that on the old Criterion movie.
Okay, yeah, fantastic movie. And when I saw that, I falling in love with him right away, because I didn't knew about Guillermo when we talked first time. And that's the same, very colorful and very strong colors, but the light is colorful, but it's very precise, single source lighting. Again, it's not like flat lighting. And I think that's what we like. We like very strong colors, but we like darkness, and we like single source lighting, because sometimes you see very colorful movies and the light is a little bit all over the place.
Right.
But we are more like, we want to be in the dark side of it.
How do you, when you are using like a lot of colorful lighting, how do you keep that from becoming muddy?
I don't know. No, because again, I know what we like, and I know what I like, and I think there's a color separation. Again, it's a matter of taste, and sometimes you cannot explain taste. It's just like, we know the color palette, and I think it's a lot about when things are getting muddy, that's because you're losing your exposure. I think, as long as you have and that's because my background is film, where the worst thing you can do on the planet was underexposed, because if you're underexposed, you have problems. Yeah. And I think that's the same, even everybody's talking about the digital world. You have to keep the exposure. I'm not using a lighting meter anymore. And of course, that's a shame, because when I shot on film, that was my best friend on the planet. Like, you sleep with your lighting meter on your pillow because nobody wants to touch it. But I think that's a lot about that. You have to have the exposure in the color. As you talked about earlier, color is getting very sensitive for exposure. And sometimes you forget that. And if you start to shoot super low light, it can get muddy very fast, because you're just gaining a lot of noise in the black. And that's one of the reasons I like to shoot T4 all the time, because all this, like what I call dirty light, is disappearing on T4. And it's just, and I like when the light have a direction. That is, but again, it's just I'm just talking about what I like. I like the light have the direction. The key light is coming from one side, and the black is just going out, like your face right now. It's nice, and
you fix.
Yeah, exactly. No, but I'm just saying that is what I like. I like the light have to have a direction and a definition.
Yeah, you've just tacitly encouraged me. I've been thinking about this I've been shooting a lot of documentaries that are four, but that's a lot. But all simultaneously, and obviously you can't change the look mid project.
Yeah,
but, but they've been overlapping. So like, I haven't really had time to think, but I'm starting a new one on Monday. And in the back of my head, I'm like, I'm just going to shoot with like at least 2 stops of ND in. So I'm forced to light more and not just, because exactly what you said about when cameras are sensitive. I know I'm just preaching to the choir, but I'm walking myself through it. When cameras are so sensitive, the light does get, that is where the muddiness comes from. Cause anything, a cell phone will throw some extra light in there,
And again, I think sometimes that's really, really cool. Depends what you want to do. Because when you're shooting in tiny sound, and you just shoot with a light that is from the neon and all that, it's a very cool look.
Yeah.
But it's, again, the way I work, the way we work is like, we don't like to too much or very little. Oh, by the way, we want to control everything. We want to if you want to have a lens flare, we're going to make a lens flare. I don't like to shoot with lenses that they're flaring all the time because I cannot control it. But it's, again, that's the way I like it. That's the reason I like those Leica lenses. It's like, they're not flaring too much, but if you want to make a flare, we just make it. We just put a light up so we got the flare. But and I think that's a kind of, you don't have the muddy light because the exposure are pretty high. And of course you need a lot of light for that. It's not like you can just shoot with the light there is, because you cannot do that if you're shooting T4, for example, and 800 ISO. Right. But again, it's more like the direction of the light. I think that's more like what we like. And I like, it is, the key light is coming from one point, and that is where it should come from.
Yeah. Because when you say, I think for people listening, like when you say single source, it doesn't necessarily need to be one unit. It can be multiple units, but it's coming from one direction.
That's correct. It's always a lot of, it's not one 20K, it's a lot of 20Ks through windows, but it's coming from one direction. And the black is just going to be black. And a lot of negative field. I think that's the most important for young filmmakers right now is like, kill some light, bring some negative fill in, because that makes the atmosphere, but that is my taste. Because everything is bouncing so much around. So negative fill is your best friend.
Yeah, I did want to, I know we got to let you go here soon, but when you mentioned the lens flares thing, in my notes, you don't shoot a lot of anamorphic, right?
We didn't shoot any anamorphic here.
Yeah, not here, but just in general.
No, John Wick is anamorphic.
Oh, it is? Because I thought you shot Master Prime and then put like a fishing line.
Yeah, but that was number 3.
Oh, that was 3.
But that was still Master anamorphic.
Oh, I see. Okay.
But we didn't get enough flare out of those lenses because it was not, if you're shooting Panavision, you get much more flare. But we just choose to go Master anamorphic. And on, so we shot with fishing lights inside and John Wick number 3, and that was a nice look.
Yeah, it is funny how, there's so much software and new cameras and everything. And then sometimes it's like, just fishing line.
Yes, exactly.
Well, I really appreciate you spending the morning with me, man.
Of course, that's fantastic.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm an enormous fan of yours, and I can't wait to see the next thing that you make. So it's always a privilege to watch.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Frame and Reference is an Albot production, produced and edited by me, Kenny McMillan. If you'd like to support the podcast directly, you can do so by going to frameandrefpod.com and clicking on the Patreon button. It's always appreciated, and as always, thanks for listening.